Welcome to the first episode of Everyman for Everyone. Our goal today is to point out that when no one's special, or when everyone's special, no one's special. I'm, of course, Jason Collins, and this is our new show where we're doing kind of a double take. We're proposing a new type of competitive format, not necessarily to replace what we currently have, because I think what we currently have is good, but more or less to add to the ways that we play the game of Clix. This is the first episode, and this is kind of where we're gonna hit the ground floor. A little bit of a short walk before we get running on this show. It's one thing to say I'm going to introduce this new proposal for a new format for Clix without putting any thought into what you're doing, and B, putting any thought into, or putting any conversation rather into what our expectations for this new format of play will be. And I have done both. I've also run tournaments in this format in the past, generally for larger pieces. I have seen what this format is capable of, and what it is capable of is really, really cool, I think. So if you are a fan of the channel already, been watching us on Facebook or keeping track of us on Facebook, you're kind of familiar with what my idea here is, but I'm going to kind of put my pen to paper, put my money where my mouth is, and kind of show everybody what I'm thinking, where I kind of want to go with this. Now, the first thing I want to point out is for all the formats that we've already kind of accepted as competitive format, and that is, we accept the Rock Age in Rock or Realms Open Championship tournaments as its own type of competitive play format. I don't want to replace that. We also have the Modern Age format, which is the standard for high-level competitive play. I do not want to replace that either. But while either of these events are running, I wouldn't mind the idea of a side tournament in which this format is also being run. In addition to which, I do think this is a format where if you're running a local store and you want 1 week to have a really solid, really good prize, and to just shut everybody up who's whining like, no, if I go in, these guys are going to have all these pay-to-win teams. You can shut these guys right up with this format, because this is a format not based on power level, though power level does exist in the format. It is a format based on balancing the wallet. It irks me to no end that people seem to think Clix is solely a pay-to-win game, and it is not. And in fact, when I have seen tournaments run with this format, not very many have been, but I've got a little bit of data to work off of. The people who do well in these tournaments also do well in standard constructed formats. And it's, like I said, this is more based on availability than attempting in any way, shape, or form to curb some kind of power level. Because one of the things you got to understand is when you make a format for play, if you curb power level, you curb play style. And I'm not looking to curb play style. I'm looking to curb availability of figure and change, as it were, the way people are playing simply for the proposal that I have here. So this is kind of my going in on the process. I don't want anything as it stands in Clix to change. I think the game is doing fine. But what I propose is a balancing ground for side tournaments or for high prize tournaments, where I don't consider Worlds or Nationals per se high prize tournaments. I consider those high level tournaments. But when you run a local event and you are a local store and you want to say, we're going to have a tournament and the prize is a brick, I think this is the format you want to run. Just to let people put their money where their mouth is. Their lack of money, as it were, where their mouth is. The format as I propose it, and as we've actually named the show, is called the Everyman Format. That's why I'm calling the show Everyman for Everyone. This is a tournament format made for everybody who plays HeroClix, but not necessarily, like, again, to replace what exists. This is just an inclusive format to allow all players to shut their mouths and play the game HeroClix, to say the least. So let's get to, this is mostly going to be a document reading, but also a high-level analysis of what the metagame for this format will look like. I want to start first with my explanation for the format. I'm going to start with the explanation for the format. I'm going to break down why I thought certain decisions I made a certain degree of sense. If you're watching live, please, your input on the chat is much appreciated. And, you know, just your thoughts and everything like that. And any questions you might have that I may be missing this documentation, because right now this is a live document. A living document, rather, and the link will frequently change. Like, the link is going to be constantly changing if I have to make any edits to further explanations. So, without further ado, let me introduce what I like to call the Everyman Project. All right. So, the Everyman Project is a competitive format for HeroClix play that follows all the standard rules of HeroClix play, but limits players to a single rarity of game elements. So, you know, it's very, very simple explanation as to high-level explanation. The Everyman build rules are as follows. Figures may only be selected from modern age sets. I'll explain this a little later on. Map selections will follow the standard modern age map legality. Once again, will follow. Game elements can only be non-prime commons, starter set, or fast force game elements that are noted with the white rarity symbol. I'm very specific about this for a reason as well. Game elements both on the board and on sideline are subject to these rules. The format is designed to allow players of all walks to play HeroClix competitively and to force a more flexible thought process when considering figures to use from their collection. So, up top, single rarity figures. Bottom, everyone can play. Change the mindset of people playing in this format. There's a couple frequently asked questions I've had in regards to the format specifically. Can I use ID cards? And I decided, sure, go ahead. You can use the X-Men student ID cards because they are common flagged. They have a white symbol on their figure number. Here's my challenge to you. Find the figures that go with the ID cards that follow the rule set as well. And it says here, can I use ID cards? In the X-Men Xavier School set, the student ID cards are currently common. With certain exceptions, see the ID cards package with a Blackbird. As a result, the decision is that you can use common rarity ID cards as long as your figure choice for call-in follows the format rules. I'll go over that in a bit and why I say go for it. And I still will say go for it in the future. All right, next, Q. The question is, character has a non-common sideline option. Can I use a sideline option? The answer flat out is no. All game elements on the board or off must follow the format limitation of common only, common / fast forces / starter set. I should actually probably update that. I don't know if you agree with me on that one. Next, can I use the Asgardian Shield? Yes, it is a common rarity tab and was packaged in the Fast Force pack. How many points is this format? Like any HeroClix format, the points are not limited, but we do suggest at a competitive level, you limit the build to 300 points. So again, like any HeroClix format, points are predetermined at the beginning, and we kind of go from there. Now, from here in the document, I actually lay out which figures in the range of etc. are legal. So from Civil War, figures number 0 is from figure 1 to 12 and figures 33 to 35 because there's a couple figures that are technically common but just got a little later in the set. You'll also note where there are sets that include prime figures. I specifically say non-prime figures in the range of their commons. I also point out the Fast Force figures, and if there is an item, like in, say, the Amazing Spider-Man, His Greatest Foes, Fast Forces, there's a web shooter item. There's a card for it anyway, and I say just go for it, man. It's not a big deal. The Heroes in a Half Shell, once again, 0 to 10, or 1 to 10. I'm going to go through this very quickly just because I want to get to one very specific decision I made, and that was in reference to Avengers Infinity. In addition, like we say here, Xavier's School, non-prime figures between 01 and 016, and the IDs 01 to 15. And then, of course, from there, you're limited as far as the characters that you can bring in on that. I think the number is like 4. But you'll see Avengers Infinity, I say figures 001 to 12. I don't state non-prime because there's no prime figures in there. I'm aware of this. But figure number 7B will not be allowed as it is this set's alternative to a prime. I caught that. I am going to say okay to Giant Girl. That puts us at 2 colossal. That's right. 2 colossal retaliators because Superior Foes of Spider-Man has Stiltman, and Stiltman is a common. Batman the Animated Series and Batman the Animated Series Starter, the Unplugged Fast Forces, etc., etc., etc. All right. So, what's the next thing we're going to talk about? Next thing we're going to talk about is why decisions were made the way they were. All right. And why I decided that these things should go the way that they go. All right, so we'll go back to the article. Why did I say modern age? Rules, just rules. That's really the pure purpose of making this decision here. Is solely to keep up with rules and rulings. As well, I want to force a mutating metagame for this format. All right, next up, the map selection. I don't know how to limit map selection, and I don't know how to limit fairly. So I just said use the standard rules for modern. So that means yes, of course you can use the Penguin Lounge, as it were, and so on and so forth. Now, here's the hot button topic: starter set and fast force figures. Why I decided they should be used. Ultimately, some of them are pretty strong, but my mindset here is I'm basing this on availability and wallet balance, as it were. And as a general rule, as a Canadian myself, here's what I observe: a fast force costs us $5 more than a pack of HeroClix, and I get guaranteed X number of game elements, assuming a WizKids packing error hasn't occurred. It's a pretty safe assumption to make 90% of the time. I also very specifically note white rarity symbol for a reason as well. Sometimes, if we go back, I believe it was the Ant-Man or Giant Man or the back in the day, a Hank Pym ID card had a gold stamp on it, and I would disallow that from a Fast Forces because it's gold stamped, and it creates an ambiguity. So I'm very specifically saying white stamped rarity for that reason. I did specifically say that the Harley Quinn's hammer, the Asgardian shield were all cool. I'm also going to say okay to the bystander tokens and the Ninja Turtles Unplugged. Perfectly fine characters. They're tough, yes, but I am not here to curb power level. I'm here to just state basically availability. And that's one of the things about the format before. And then, of course, game elements both on sideline, on board and on sideline are subject to the rules because it does its own kind of curbing in itself. So the thought process is my job here is presenting a format. Game balance is WizKids' problem. So I am here to balance your wallet and offer you as a player an alternative format, or as a judge even, an alternative format to present to your players that just generally stops the argument and creates an open play space that will just, give all players of all availabilities a certain level of awesome. I repeat, do not want this to replace the current standard of play of HeroClix as we see it. The Rock has its own. WizKids has its own. I do think this is a cool side event / cool prize leveling tournament format. I'm going to repeat that several times, I think, throughout the episode, because I want people to understand before they lose their minds about this. This shouldn't, like, people take this more seriously if I turn to them and say, I think this is what we should use for Worlds. And I disagree. I do not think this is what we should use for Worlds. There's an entire series of figures being created by WizKids, and that's what Worlds should represent, is everything available to them. Is there a pay-to-win element to it? Some may say yes, some may say no. When you're peaking out a certain level of strategy, that's going to occur. One thing to note, a lot of people will compare this to the Pauper format in Magic the Gathering. Part of why I want to call this the Everyman project is to differentiate it in a number of ways. One of which, the Pauper format in Magic the Gathering, for those of you unfamiliar with Magic the Gathering, follows the same rules. The card, now because of the rules of reprinting in Magic the Gathering, some of the cards may be reprinted in a different rarity, but as long as they were common once, they're all fine. That's one thing that's different. The other thing is Magic the Gathering from alpha to currently plays almost exactly the same as a game. There haven't been enough rule changes between Magic the Gathering 1993 and 2018 for them to really consistently say, oh, this is problematic. And so that's one of the things I want to point out is that is a full range of their game. We are going to try to keep it modern in this case because the game that we played back in Infinity Challenge is very different from the game we're playing as of this episode. And then if you watch in a future episode, it could also be a completely different game. It's but it's the same time. It's like that's a 15 years worth of change sort of situation. And in those 15 years, enough has changed to say I don't want judges to have to worry if they use this format about certain things. If that makes any degree of sense. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about then is the cries that I hear very immediately to this figure's going to be strong, 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 this figure's going to be strong. And I want to lead with how very highly praised the current meta game in HeroClix is as we stand right now. The competitive HeroClix meta is very, very well praised. There are a lot of team options in which you can use. Pretty cool, right? The same goes for our format here. Give me a second here to just make things a little bit more visual. Boom. All right. So we see these are the figures that immediately come up when people talk to me about the format. Athena. Actually, this one's been more brought to my attention or brought up in conversation by the fellow over at Mr. Clix. I think his name is James. And this is a figure he's brought up a number of times. And yes, this is a very good common figure. I'm going to explain something in a little bit later as to just a certain thing we should be observing when we say, oh my gosh, this is a good figure. Another figure people talk about is Cable. 120 points, capable of moving, attacking, 7 range, indomitable, gets energy shield. He's got traded stealth, I believe, ignores hindering from movement. And he, like I said, this ability is attached to phasing, and he does a ton of damage. He's got probability control. He's 120 points. He's a common. A very good figure in the format. Batman Beyond is 6 range, 2 targets. So what you see is what you get. Dial ignores hindering for line of fire. Also has a trait where you can choose between Blades, Claws, Energy Explosion, Incapacitate, or Steal Energy. And because he ignores hindering, he's got an answer to part of the Cable problem. Next up, some people brought up this Batman being a possible use. Why not? He's got the Outsider's team ability, which is less good now, but still pretty good. Batman team ability, his own version of Pick a Power, and he ignores elevated and hindering for movement. A very, very cool figure. Next up, the 50-point Hulk from the Fast Forces. This figure has seen some competitive play. He is the style looks a little unassuming, but he's also got a trait that when he moves after action is resolved, he can use Quake at no cost. Her. This is a conversation I never thought I'd be having. Her is pretty good in the format. 90 points, has running shot, prop, power, cosmic, and a cool support power towards the end of her dial. Giant Girl is a colossal retaliator. Very, very neato figure. The quarter token Ninja Turtles will really stand out in spite of my performance with them in a HeroClix tournament. They're a very, very cool option to play in this. And I want to bring all of this up for a very important reason. Why is this a problem that these figures are strong? It isn't. It's just this particular metagame gets redefined by a new set of figures. You still have to... These figures don't complete a team. There are things you have to add to them. They need work. They're not the full package. There's 300 points with which to work. And I'm going to... From the future of this episode, I'm going to be focusing purely on this format at 300 points. The Mudman is already its own little problem. It's going to be a problem in this format too. We're going to have to find a way to work our way around it. And we've worked our way around everything so far. I don't see why working our way through further things is actually a problem. JD Clix is pointing out that he uses a Punisher from Avengers Defenders War, and I actually have take a chance to read Mr. Kevin Newman's question there. But the Punisher, this is the shifting focus Punisher, that's half of the shifting focus. You don't need the other half because this half blows things up really strong. It is, I think, an eye-opening format for a number of reasons. It is okay for us to use figures that aren't normally good and have them dominate this format because they're only going to dominate them for so long. This is not the main event format. And if I'm going to take curation of this format, levels of bans have to be on the level of Felix Faust. That's my basis of banning, because that's WizKid's basis of banning. I don't think we should ever at any point in this format be banning figures unless they fundamentally stop HeroClix play. Figures are allowed to be strong in this format because commons are allowed to be strong. That is game design. WizKids said themselves, commons aren't going to be complicated, but that doesn't mean they're going to be weak. Well, let's see how strong they are amongst each other. So that's kind of the point I'm going at. Now, other issues I want to address after a quick break here. Excuse me. All right. So, to actually address directly on Kevin Newman, he says, or he posits, is it possible that there are aspects in these limited game elements that might cause an imbalance because elements of higher rarity that counter these aspects are removed? Cool. That's fine. A certain level of imbalance in collectible games is going to exist. It's almost unavoidable. That's the thing about collectible games that often gets missed in the collective mindset is we have board game thought, board game direction as far as that's concerned. And board games are meant to be everybody walks in at 0, everybody walks out about the same level, but everybody had a chance to win equally. And when you get to collectible games, that kind of breaks down a little because if I have 7 people in the room, as an example, and 5 of them have bought 25 packs and 1 of them has bought 7 packs. The guys who bought 25 packs are already at a higher imbalance than the guys who bought 5 packs, right? And that's unfortunately, that's not the only imbalance that exists in collectible gaming, but that's just the first one. That's the collectible portion of the game. One thing that myself and, what's his name? Edward Sheldon, I was on Starting Over podcast, which incidentally I forgot the name of in an episode of Moving Attack, and hope Amber was lovely enough to put that in subtitles under that, me going, is that rarity does affect a figure's balance. It's a thing. A super rare figure will do more things than a common figure and at a lower cost. That's what makes it a super rare. That's a game design thing that if you actually look at the figures at the higher rarities and see how that works out, Yeah, that's an imbalance that exists because rarity affects point cost in this game. Rarity affects cost in Magic the Gathering as well. I don't know if you knew that. And by making this format modern, it's kind of self-correcting. It's got a self-correcting prophecy, as it were. As stuff gets phased out, stuff gets phased in, and we get a little bit more interested in things. I was going to go off on another topic, and I don't remember what it was before I got off on this one. Amber's shrugging at me. All right, cool. I do this a lot, so get used to it. I tangent in 8 different directions. So, as I said, this is going to be the project, as it were, as far as a fun style, competitive style play format that I would like judges to try out. I would like them to tell me how it works out for them and what works well. I'm not going to gut reaction start banning things because that's not cool. I don't believe that a ban is a thing. Kevin does go on to ask, once you've worked out the kinks of the format, tested and set it in motion, would there be a chance that there'd be a version of this format that didn't require modern age? Honestly, the fact that I'm saying modern age is laziness. And the other thing is, I want this to be as much of the game of HeroClix. I want this to be as much of the game of HeroClix as it possibly can be. And if I have to create an extra rule set to answer all of the questions that may come up from a bunch of older figures, I feel as though that's kind of taking away from things. I also, again, what ends up happening if you have a Golden Age format or a Vintage format, as Magic the Gathering often has, is that a deck will stay stagnantly strong, or a build will stay stagnantly strong. So if build A, and this is a Golden Age tournament, we're going to assume, build A beats all builds, then build A dominates until 2031, when finally the figure comes that kills build A. And that kind of, HeroClix has this problem. Any vintage format is going to have, or any legacy-based format. By legacy, I mean long-term, long-standing, long availability. Yes, Kevin Newman, this is fully inspired by the Magic the Gathering Pauper format, which I do play when I get a chance in Magic the Gathering. It is one of my 2 competitive formats in Magic. My main format that I play, guilty casual for Magic the Gathering, is Elder Dragon Highlander or Commander, depending on how you refer to it. It's a very casual kitchen table beer and chips format of Magic the Gathering. When I go to Grand Prix, I will play Draft Sealed, or I will play Pauper, or I will play Modern once I've finally decided to spend the money to finish the sideboard on my Hollow One deck. The sideboard is almost as expensive as the deck, man. It's crazy. But yeah, it was very much inspired by the Pauper format. Having played the Pauper format in Magic the Gathering, I can tell you this: that format has strong decks. As a Magic the Gathering player, I'm familiar with the fact that Affinity was poison back in the day, and guess what? Affinity in the Pauper format, just as poisonous. Guilty of playing it. But there are counters and sideboards and stuff that you can use over the years of Magic from the common slot. The Elf deck is ridiculous in the Pauper format, and this is the thing that I kind of want to point out, is that regardless of how much you limit the game, people will find a way to find the strongest things, and I'm okay with that. What I'm doing with this is I'm saying, if somebody has found the strongest thing, you should have it too. And that's kind of what this format is all about, is if there is a defined team that dominates a modern format in this particular game style for a long period of time, it will be gone soon enough, and everybody has it, and nobody can complain about how much it costs. And if it does cost more, I'm sorry I created a format that actually defines a secondary market. Trust me, there are some Pauper decks in Magic the Gathering that do cost $60 to $80 when they should be costing $20. So, yeah. So, yeah, this is the story of what we're doing. It's, as I've said, I've tried this in the past, and I want to share my story. A while back when I first started working with Majestics, we had an agreement where they would send me a brick, and I would use that brick for some degree of prizing, be it on the channel or through my local store. And I think we only got a chance to really exchange one brick when Pat turned around and said, "It's easier if I just send you money, isn't it?" And it's a very true fact. It was much easier for him to send us money. But the first brick that we got was a brick of Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He also sent a care package with an Amazon gift card, and I believe we also got some of the con exclusive lantern items. So I took those and made them part of prizing for an all common tournament using this format's rules. This is not a new idea of mine. I'm just putting it in writing now. And the team that ended up winning, at the time, Invincible Iron Man was a Modern Age set. Trinity War was a Modern Age set. There was a lot of teams using Atomica. I expected no less. The team that won was using figure 001 from Invincible Iron Man. Yes, that Iron Man. The Iron Man who says, "What map?" Along with a bunch of the Fast Force Avengers Assemble, the classic Avengers. I believe that's actually the Age of Ultron style, or it was the original Avengers. Ant-Man, Wasp, and Captain America, I believe, were the ones he used. So I might be wrong on that one. Yeah, because I think it was the Captain America that allowed like an extra movement or something like that. It was a really cool team. And this player, his name is Aubrey. You've heard me mention his name on the channel, because he is a good player. He in the high level of play, he's done well when everything is allowed, and now he's won this tournament where nothing is allowed. And I think he's cemented himself with the ability to say he's a good player. He's good at the game of HeroClix, and yeah, it's kind of the thing. I don't know who the troll is there, but Olivia L. I don't know what you're expecting out of this. All right, so I'm open to some more questions if anybody has them. But I think this is going to be first episode is going to be the proposal, the idea of the format, and then we'll kind of figure our way. What we're going to do with future episodes is we're going to discuss teams. We're going to discuss figures in this particular format that may stand out, teams that may actually be an answer to certain standouts, and so on, and just generally open up the door or the gateways to this format and open up the discussion, because it's one thing to say here's a new format and then stop talking about it. That doesn't do much for anybody. I want to just open up the discussion, as it were, and get everybody sort of talking and discussing this. And so future episodes will be, hey, here's a figure. It's a pretty cool figure. I'm sorry, I'm caught off guard for somebody who either doesn't understand where they are or whatnot. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the figures who are good in this format, possible teams for this format, and answers to figures in the format. I'm just going to kind of pull back up the list of figures as we saw, and just kind of discuss how things kind of answer themselves when we start asking these questions. So, so Athena is strong. She's got Invincible off the top, which makes her very tough, which means she's not easy for Cable to just walk off and kill, or Batman Beyond, because they rely a little bit on Psychic Blast and high damage. Cable is very capable of staying in stealth and taking shots. Batman Beyond says, "What's stealth?" Oh, it's one of those. Great, guys. We did it. We made it. We have a troll. We have a troll. I made it. I made it, guys. Oh. All right. Anyway, this Hulk is pretty dope. right? Very strong. How do we deal with this? Well, we deal with it with Batman Beyond. We Psychic Blast him with one shot. Or Cable. I mean, there's lots of TK in this format. I'm not going to break it all down now, but there's ways of getting these Psychic Blast shots off to kill this Hulk. I think it is 1995. I kind of brought myself back. Hers just okay. I mean, I don't think she's meta-defining. She's just going to be better in this format. I should take her off of this consideration list. Giant Girl can be dealt with. She's got an 18 defense. We can get through that. We've got characters with 11 attack and prob, right? Giant Girl, I do believe, is still only attacking one character with her, since an opposing character attack Giant Girl or damage to friendly characters in her last turn. Place her such that she may close target the character and do so. I mean, even her Claw's Retaliation doesn't do any damage to this dude or this lady. Because I believe Cable actually has invulnerable or impervious, invulnerable, and her and the Giant Girl isn't doing penetrating, if I remember correctly. She can close target the character, and she may activate this in addition. So the only thing that makes her really stand out as a Colossus Retaliator is that she Colossus Retaliates. I also am a teenager and have hair again. It just moved. The Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael have their own little weaknesses, is in the fact that they don't move well on their own, will need some help, and can just eventually be ground out. I think the Cable that we're talking about is a very strong answer to these particular Ninja Turtles. The point I'm getting at here is the long and the short of it is that the metagame itself answers itself. And then every time somebody asks, is X character super strong in this particular metagame? It seems like, oh my gosh, there's no answer. And then you look at the grander scale and there will be an answer for it. So that is, it's kind of its own self-fulfilling prophecy, as it were. And the troll is now being trolled in my chat. Allow it to happen, guys. Just let it happen. I'm going to allow this. Excuse me. I'm not sure where that noise came from. Yeah, so we're going to leave it at that for now. High level, discuss the format, discuss our ideas. We're going to come into next week, having had this discussion, with our first real discussion on talking about figures and teams we could build about. So we're going to take the obvious answers here for the first little bit and just build teams around them. And then once we've kind of built teams around these obvious first answers, we will then move into other teams and off-kilter or off-meta teams, as it were, in my own version, as it would be if I was to be doing an episode of Into the Mind of Madness, and go from there. So if there's no other questions in regards to the format, we'll start wrapping this up. I want to say thanks to everybody who's offered up some format suggestions. When I first introduced the format in a document, and okay, so I'm officially bored with troll here. When I first, boom. All right, cool. All right, sorry, I'm just dealing with chat trolls. So, when I first introduced this format on our Facebook, a few people offered up some ideas as far as the document format. It was a little rough around the edges. I had made a couple typos. There's some format issues. So I want to thank them. I want to thank anybody who's opened up the discussion to the format itself. As a general rule, I was pretty set on where we were going and why. I only have so many. Like there's only so many things. Oh geez, hold on. Where was I going with this? I was on a phone and then all right. Sorry. So I was kind of set in the format, and there was only so many directions I could go with it, and a lot of people had had their ideas as far as the format was concerned, and I was willing to discuss them. So I appreciate everybody who saw the patience to see my reasoning for a lot of decision making. Clix 6 in the chat though Does this format limit collections? I only ask as I have many shelves full of colossal characters I'm afraid just won't move ever. Do you think limiting it to the rare slot frees up collections? Okay, so initially, I look at the standard format of HeroClix as its own thing. And, you know, that allows just about every character in the game. I feel like the common slot, especially nowadays, is very underrepresented, and I feel like it needs a little bit of love. But there are also going to be figures, like you said, that sit on your shelf and don't do anything. And I'm doing my best in a certain way to kind of say this is cool. I'm just kind of saying let's allow this in a competitive environment. I'm still big on get your friends over for some beer and chips and play some HeroClix. I mean, I think of anything over 300 or 400 points as the HeroClix version of Elder Dragon Highlander or Commander, where it's just like, I'm going to throw a bunch of stuff on. As well, if you have friends you can play with or a venue in which you play the games, offer up what I like to call the raid battle, where kind of inspired by World of Warcraft, when we used to have, I think 5 people would come to my house and play HeroClix, we would we would have a problem where when it's 5 people playing a 600-point game, one person, it's unavoidable, will get teamed up on. And 9 times out of 10 it was me because I'd do something stupid like go into the middle of the map and try to fight everybody. When you fight everybody, you get teamed up on. So what we did was, instead of having that be a problem, have that be the purpose. And we said, everybody build a 600-point team. How many people are playing? 5. All right, player number 6, you get a 3,000-point team. And I thought that really worked out. And that's where we got a lot more use out of our Colossals casually. As far as competitively, I mean, I'm not really trying to open up the entire collection. I'm trying to allow or just kind of put a stop to the idea of the pay-to-win argument, because you will find in this particular format, those players who are winning in the pay-to-win format are also winning in this format, and that's because they are skilled players. But you know, but yeah, I'm hoping my raid idea is something that you can get some use out of. JD clicks on the format. What IDs and weapons can we use? Well, let's go through that, shall we? As far as weapons, I believe the only ones that fall under the common / fast force / starters were Harley's hammer from the Joker's Wild, the web shooters from Spider-Man, and Asgardian shield from the Mighty Thor starter. Other than that, there's nothing really common tagged. As far as ID cards are concerned, the X-Men I allowed in the format, X-Men IDs number 1 to 15. Now I'm going to go on the HC Realms scene, and we're going to talk about where we stand on that. And where are we looking? So 1 through 15, you'll note, are all the student IDs. So we have Sprite, Artie, Leech, Rusty, Skids, All New Wolverine, Brew, Gold Balls, Prodigy, Chamber, Husk, Jubilee, M, Skins, Sync. Now, I'm answering JD Clicks. I'm answering your question a long way. So we're going to get to the crux of it. So let's look at what we can actually use. Sprite does not have a common variation of Shadowcat with which to use, I do believe.
Sprite is rare, and Kitty Pryde, I believe, is uncommon.
So can't use that one. Artie, I believe, is a common. Yep, Artie's a common, so we can use Artie as an ID card. Leech is uncommon, if I remember correctly. Leech is uncommon, so we will not be able to use the Leech ID card. Rusty and Skids both have I believe a common and a starter set version with which you can use. Rusty and Skids are commons. There's also the Fast Forces version you can use. All New Wolverine is only available in a rare. I think all other identities X23. So if they make a common X23, go for it. Brew, also the figure is only a rare. Gold Balls, also I love saying that name, by the way. Gold Balls is also a figure only available in rare. Prodigy, I believe, was a rare, or what is it? Was
Uncommon.
Prodigy was was not common. He's a fire starter. Twisted. He's a rare. Prodigy's a rare. Where are we here? So we go to Prodigy to Chamber. Chamber is a rare. Husk, I believe, is also a rare. So there's Chamber. Husk is. Oh no, maybe Husk is Husk. There you go. Husk is a common. There you go. You can call in Husk, guys. I'm probably making people very angry with it, I'm sure. Jubilee, I believe, was an uncommon. Jubilee's uncommon, so can't be used. M is a rare, if I remember correctly. Correct. And then Skin is an uncommon, if I remember. Yep, uncommon for Skin. And then we move to Sync, who I think was common. So Sync. So we have five actual usable ID cards in Artie, Rusty, Skids, Husk, and Sync. The format itself, as far as drafting is concerned, I mean, drafting is generally based on packs. If you brown bag it, you might be able to pull something off, but you might find people unable to play if you allow the format to only be like you only allow commons. So draftable maybe if you build the packs such that like I did with the brown bag pet challenge, which was a thing I did back at Canada Cup 2 years ago or 1 year ago, where what I did was I filled a bunch of brown bags full of various figures throughout the years at HeroClix. I actually filled it with points, and then everybody built sealed. But as far as draftable is concerned, I don't think it's because draft is generally a sealed sort of thing. I don't think it's particularly draftable. But that's not to say, like I said, you can't brown bag draft it and put 5 random commons in a bag and throw them around and see how that works out. But draft is another dream of mine in the many, many futures of HeroClix, to say the least. So, where are we at this point? I think we're about wrapping it up. But keep the questions coming if you have them. If you've missed the early parts of the episode, in the description I have put a link to the current version of the PDF of the rules for the format that we're trying to kind of draw some attention to. It's not a particularly hard format to kind of figure out. And then what we're going to be doing with future episodes of the show is building teams based around the format. We'll just come up with a new team a week, and then for the first couple of weeks we'll be using what's obviously strong, and then go with what's less obviously strong, and kind of do what we like to call home brewing in the collectible gaming world. And then beyond that, we'll once new sets come out, every time we get a new set, we will look at the common slot in our format and say, hey, this is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad, this is great, this is awesome, this is whatever, and kind of go over why we think that. So. Your dream is finding a way to making all of our piles of duplicate commons useful. Oh boy, do I have a dream! I should start making the thumbnails of this show, the pictures of our buckets of figures. I have a dream where those have value because of this format. Here's a potential side effect if this format does pick up steam that I need to address, and I will be unavoidable, and it's the idea of the secondary market and how it could get affected by this. How do I put this? If this format somehow manages to collect steam, yes, some figures who are common will go up in price. That is an unavoidable side effect of a game in which a competitive play standard is being used, and I wish I could promise that it would never happen. I can't. It's a promise I can't make. But the amount of steam that this format would have to pick up for that to happen is insurmountable. And I just don't see it occurring in the near future. That said, who knows what the future does hold. If you're watching this and you are a judge, and you have a tournament to run, please run it. I do not suggest this format for just a simple monthly OP kit prize. I do think you want this format to be for a sizable prize, as I said at the beginning. You know, if you happen to have an extra brick hanging around, I know. If there's an extra brick hanging around, right? Like I'm a crazy man. And the store is willing to put up as a prize, cool. But yes, you're right, Kevin. Only as long as they're in modern, which is kind of why I want this to be a modern only format as well. If I start making it a legacy format, then you know, because of the limitation of the game, it's a slippery slope. It's rather an uphill climb to get back to level ground, and the format starts to lose a little bit of meaning, as it were. Anyway, so judges, here's my call. Try this format out. Run a couple tournaments. Put some sizable prizes on there. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, run 5 Fast Force 50-point Hulks. See how it goes. Let me know if it runs well. I'm okay with power level being high in this format. Power level is allowed to be high. Strong figures are allowed to be strong. And I just want to see how this format defines itself. And I want to hear reports from the field. If you have run a tournament with this particular format, I don't want to hear reports of a modification of this format. I want this format to kind of be what my test ground is. I don't get any information if you turned around and said, I ran your format without fast forces and starters. That's not the information that's going to help me, because that's a different metagame in itself. If by allowing the fast forces and starter sets will allow its own different metagame. And I want each competitive environment, I want the competitive environment that I'm trying to build here to be allowed to thrive, to be allowed to create itself. And if a team does start to become dominant, I do want that to be a part of our show here, where we start to say, okay, here's our problem team. How can we possibly solve this team? So I think that's going to be it for me today. Next week, like I said, we'll probably start with what I like to call the obvious answer in Cable, and start building a team around Cable, and then go from there and see what we can come up with in the future. So thank you guys for joining me. Thank you guys for being a very big part of the Everyman project. I do want, like I said, I want to hear tales from the field and how things are going with it. I will do my best to attempt to run something locally and get my own data from this and see what goes from there. See if I can pocket or open up my pockets and grab a brick to run this kind of thing. So looking forward to the future of this, and I'm looking forward to everybody who's watching in being a part of this. And here's hoping we can get this format run as a side event in a major tournament, such as Rock World Cup or HeroClix World Championships, alongside the main event. So just, guys, remember, as we exit this, first of all, if you would want to support us over at patreon.com/Clix, any valuation gets you access to our Patreon Discord or our Patreon Hangout, which is going to be occurring this month, or this coming month, October 14th. That's going to be the Sunday. Usually it's the first Sunday of the month, but we have plans on the 7th that kind of disallow us to manage that particular event. As well, check out our sponsors over at MajesticCCG.com/Apex-Insiders, $3 a month. Get your brain dumps from some of the greats in HeroClix, and some, silly nonsense from guys like myself. Without further ado, guys, I want to thank you guys for watching. And just remember, when everyone's special, no one's special. Thanks for joining us on the Everyman Project.